Welcome to the Call Your Shot podcast, your weekly sports recap podcast where we break down the hottest headlines, dissect the latest injuries, and serve up our own hard-hitting analysis of the past week in sports. But that's not all. We're not just here to talk about the past, we're here to predict the future as well. On the Call Your Shot podcast, we boldly predict the outcomes of the upcoming week's games.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. This is the Call Your Shot podcast with your hosts, Alex Harris and Drew Moore, here to talk about NFL over the past couple weeks and talk about the NBA. So is there anything in particular that you wanted to get into first, Drew, within the NFL realm?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I'm looking for a new NFL team. As of last week, I'm not sure that I can be a Saints fan anymore. From the high expectations every year. I mean, not even really all that high, just to make the playoffs. I mean, I'm not asking for much out here. Worst or lowest, weakest. That's the word I'm looking for. Weakest strength of schedule in the league. Doesn't matter. Still can't win anything. They couldn't win a lottery if they handed him the winning numbers. So I don't know what they're going to do next year. Derek Carr is not the answer. At least, give Jameis a chance and figure out what you're going to do with Taysom Hill. You're paying him all that money. Might as well, use him. I mean, he was hurt last week, but this week, we'll see what he can do. And they're probably going to lose this week too. So, maybe I'll go back to the Seahawks. I was a Seahawks fan when they had Sean Alexander because that's my middle name. But, anybody
over here.
Anybody out there having recommendations?
Stay away. You're still wearing that same hat. Y'all were one of the heaviest favorites to win your division. And, now you're in third behind Desmond Ridder and, Baker Mayfield.
Taylor Heineke now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. True.
Make some great beer.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It is weird because the Saints, we did have high expectations for them. We both expected them to be double-digit wins, and the Derek Carr situation just has not worked out, and you can't really get out from under them, with at least not until, I think, next season, unless they want to kind of pull a Denver Broncos and just be like, you know what, we're just going to eat all this money. But we'll get a little bit more into that later. We do have news from when we were originally filming about a week and a half ago, because we had the preview of the Thursday night football game against the Seahawks and the Eagles. And we pulled it off, Drew. We did it. We ended up beating the Eagles by 3 points. With Drew Lock, the backup quarterback. Geno Smith did not play, did not look too great for a very long time. And then we ended up putting a couple drives together and ended up going on a game-winning drive. And Drew Lock ended up throwing about like a 30-yard touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba with about a minute left. And then we were able to pick off Jalen Hurts basically and seal the game. So thoughts on that, Drew? Do you have, think the Seahawks can make any noise? If we can squeak into the playoffs now, we're in control of our own destiny. We just got to win out. And, Eagles kind of were continuing to struggle, even though they got to win this last weekend against the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where you have an illness going around the team. I don't want to give the Eagles any excuses, but you have an illness going around the team
it's
and everything.
Blue season, and everybody's sick.
Yeah, we've seen how it's impacted players, and this week Kyler Murray's he has an illness too, so either he won't play. If he does play, just destroy whatever. It doesn't matter what the spread is. They're gonna just murder them. If was it Clayton Tune or whatever? If he's playing, yeah, bloodbath. Anyways, and that's against the Eagles too, ironically. So yeah, Jalen Hurts had a QE rating of 40. Like that's not the Jalen Hurts that we all know and love. And the Seahawks aren't doing that to quarterbacks on a weekly basis too. So it wasn't really anything that the Seahawks were doing in particular. Stop. It wasn't necessarily anything that the Seahawks were doing. It was more so bad Jalen Hurts and bad decision making. He had 2 terrible interceptions, one at the end of the game that sealed the game for the Seahawks, and one earlier on as well. And whether it was the sickness, the illness, or whatever, or whether he's actually still dealing with some of the injuries that he had early on in the season that have just kind of been lingering because they hadn't had any real easy matchups until last week when they played against the Giants. So he's just been playing, and he's played against some of the toughest competition in the league, getting banged up each game, limping off the field. But he's a warrior. He's an animal. Keeps on getting back. Keeps on trying to push through it. But at what point do you just got to sit the guy down and be like, "You look, man, we already made the playoffs. Just shut it down. Have you healthy for the postseason. Try and make a push then." Um, so I mean, and also Drew Lock, stop
I'm
it.
about to say we with Drew Lock. Okay, I don't want to talk about these
I,
injuries and stuff like that. We had Drew Lock, Mister.
I know.
Yeah, okay,
Stop.
but
Okay,
I
but
hear
but
you with
also
Jalen Hurts.
though, let's not forget. I did say that I would only be able to look at the Seahawks in this game, and
Did
also
you
the
put
under.
a bet on him?
I actually ended up putting a bet on the Eagles, ironically. Uh,
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to. I don't want to hear Drew like, I talked about a lot of things. One
well,
of those things was the
well,
possibility of Seattle
I was
potentially
I was
covering.
hoping I was hoping that it was going to be Gino, and that would have gave me more confidence than Drew
Just
Lock. And
canceled that bet.
dude, I Drew Lock is so bad, man. I could not
I
I
couldn't
could not
tell.
put my money behind him, and well, I mean, I don't know. I took the under in that hit, so it just kind of balanced out a little bit, lost a little bit to the juice, but it is what it is. Um, yeah, I had zero confidence in Drew Lock, but apparently he's not the worst. But he is not good either.
Yeah, a
I've seen
lot of
enough Drew
those.
Lock in Denver to know that.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of those plays were what I expected from Drew Lock, and it was kind of very nauseating. So, ended up in the fourth quarter going on a 10-0 run, and he did have the one touchdown drive. I think they had showed a graphic before they went on that drive that he had two previous ones in his career, and I was like, oh wow, there's hope. And yeah, he actually put it together. I agree with you when it comes to Jalen Hurts. He's kind of been banged up over the past few weeks, midway through the season. He's had his knee injury. He's battled through his sickness, things of that nature. I just don't think that at this point they can really afford to sit him, even in the later weeks when they play against the Cardinals this upcoming week or against the Giants, because the way that the NFC is shaped up with the Cowboys, the 49ers, with the Eagles, like if you want home field advantage or if you want the number one seed, like I think that everybody's going to have to play. So it's all going to come down to the final week. So it's going to make it tough on them, potentially going into the playoffs with the Jalen Hurts not fully 100%. So we'll have to see when it comes to that, as again, they play the Cardinals this week and then they play the Giants next week. So maybe, get an early lead on the Cardinals and you can sit the second half or something like that. But they do need to
Mm-hmm.
win these last two games. Following up on that, we did have a few games that happened over the past week that were some big notorious games, but we did have some news come out recently talking about you, former coach Drew, with Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. They have come out and said that Russ is going to be sat for the rest of the season and that there is a very strong possibility that he may be cut entirely from the Broncos. So, what were your thoughts on that, Drew? He's coming off of a season that's much improved compared to last year. And when you compare some of his stats to some of the other quarterbacks in the league that people would call elite, they haven't been that far off. And he went on that midway through the season, that 6-1 or 5-0 run for the Broncos, and they got kind of within the playoff picture. Now they're sitting at 7-8, probably not going to make it. So, what are your thoughts on that situation? And do you feel that they should cut Russ, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, like he had a period throughout the season where he, was kind of cooking a little bit and he was kind of finding his groove. It didn't help the last game. He didn't really end up having Cortland Sutton to rely on. That's his main guy. But at the same time, though, like the offense has looked dead for a large portion of the season. But I mean, from day one, Sean Payton, he's just been waiting to get rid of, of Russell
He came in
Wilson.
hating
He
Russell from
hated him.
jump. He's like, we
Yeah,
ain't kissing no babies out here.
exactly. He hated him. He was basically just waiting to get to get the blessing from the owners to cut loose with him, or cut him loose, I should say. And you know, losing to the 4-11 Patriots will do that. That'll for sure give you the green light to just shut him down. And also, he had some incentives too, to where I guess if he got injured or something, then he like the team would owe him like a bunch of money and stuff. And so, um, which I it's kind of weird because then you're kind of holding a player back from performing or also like making money. Like for example, if this was like a contract year for Russ and like he needs to play to show like, okay, this is what I can still do for the team. I'm still valuable. like that's kind of, like not necessarily a conflict of interest, but it kind of screws over the player, in a sense to where they don't have that opportunity, and that has to be something somewhere in a contract. I don't know, maybe a collective bargaining agreement or something. But I just thought that was kind of weird that they're able to do that and hold him back from getting injured, which is good. But they're also not going to make the playoffs, and I guess if they win, um, oh no, that's I'm thinking of something else. But regardless, this will help my win total bet that I have. Um, and so as long as I think I had it at like 8.5 or something like that. Um, so as long as they, continue to
lose
lose, I'm fine,
lose one
fine
of
by
them.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a weird situation. I was looking at his contract. So he signed for the Broncos through 2028. This is his second year. His money is guaranteed through 2024, meaning that they would have to eat his salary for next season if they were to cut him. And if he's on the team on March 17th of 2024, then he's owed his guaranteed contract through 2025. So that means that in the offseason, they would necessarily need to cut him if they wanted to save some salary cap money, which yeah, I kind of agree with you with Sean Payton. He didn't seem to have much faith in Russ, and that whole situation's been kind of weird. Now people are like, okay, Russ was successful for so many years, nearly a decade with the Seattle Seahawks, and he was on pace for a Hall of Fame career. Now, coming off of the terrible season that the Broncos had last year and this, I guess you could call it mediocre season that they had this year, does that kind of damper Russell Wilson's potential to make the Hall of Fame? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that Russell is still on pace to be a Hall of Famer, or do you think that this kind of knocks him out?
I mean, I don't think that this necessarily like this has nothing to do with his career previously. Like this is one of those things where Michael Jordan went to the Wizards. Like
Yeah,
was
but
not
Russ
good.
isn't done. I think Russ like 34, whatever. He'll
Yeah,
get signed to another team if he gets cut. He'll be a starter somewhere
yeah,
else.
and so, but I mean, he's towards the end of his career though, for sure, and it's one of those things where I'm first of all, let me back up. I'm not
Towards the end
comparing.
of his
I'm not
career. Hold
comparing
on.
Russ
He,
to
he was signed to
well,
2028.
dude, dude. He is winding down. And also, let me correct myself here before somebody comes for me. Um, I'm not comparing Russ to Michael Jordan. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
I heard it.
when he okay, when Jordan went to another team after a great career. I'll just say great career, not a legendary career, but
Okay.
um he wasn't the same. He went to another team and he was older, missed a step. His shot weren't as crisp. Just like Russ, his throws aren't as crisp. He's still got a lot of he's still a great deep ball passer, but at the same time, like he's kind of lumbering out there. He's not really running,
Yeah.
he's lumbering.
The
And
mobility is not what it used to be. His backyard football can just run out of any potential rush and chuck it down. Doug Baldwin's down there somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
literally.
Kind of past
Or
those
even
days.
Tyler Lockett toe drag swag in the back corner of the end zone or something crazy.
Yeah, rookie
But
DK, all that stuff. I could see that. He's 35. He just turned 35 at the end of November. So, you know,
old.
I mean, like nowadays, that's not terrible. You had Tom Brady and Drew Brees and all these other quarterbacks. Even like Joe Flacco, we'll get more into him later, but he's like 39, chucking it out there for the Browns. So, but like we were talking about, like his stats compared to other players, like Patrick Mahomes and him, like obviously, like I said, we're not comparing Russell Wilson to Patrick Mahomes, especially at this stage in their careers. But the Chiefs are 9-6, the Broncos are now 7-8. Patrick's thrown for about 3,900 yards. Russell's only thrown for 3,100 yards. They have the same amount of touchdowns. Russ has 6 less interceptions and a better passer rating. So, like, I think that I think it's, I guess, more Sean Payton in the situation, because I wouldn't say that Russ of the season has been bad by any. I'm not saying he's been great, but I think he's been a solid quarterback right this season at least. I just think that in accumulation with last season, with Sean Payton coming in, it just kind of wasn't enough, I guess you could say, because it was basically like playoffs are bust for the Broncos at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, at at this point, you know, just comparing PFF grades, apparently Geno Smith is rated as a better quarterback right now than Russell Wilson. I'm not sure if I'd agree with that, but I guess statistically speaking,
I
he
think
has been
I'd
playing
rather have
better. And
Gino right now. I don't know. I don't know.
That's
That's a
it's
that's a
tough.
toss
Yeah,
up.
like
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, right, like one spot above Geno is Patrick Mahomes too. So like it kind of just
Hmm.
shows where players are at um and like what this season has kind of turned into and like because everybody's like, oh, watch rinse repeat. Patrick Mahomes, he'll figure it out. He'll turn it around, and they still haven't really turned it around. And honestly, it's going in the wrong direction at this point. Um, but yeah, going back over to Russ and the Broncos. I mean, I think this is the beginning of the end of the season for the Broncos. Just kind of seeing the writing on the wall and just calling it quits and playing for next year, essentially. So
But where do you go from here? Because they are, like we've talked about it, like one of the worst things you can be in the NFL is average. They're going to be probably
average.
sitting at around 500. They're going to probably cut Russ. Their pieces aren't necessarily that valuable other than Patrick Surtain. Cortland Sutton's getting up in there in age. Jerry Jeudy hasn't been what people expected. Javonte Williams has still been battling through his injuries and hasn't been fully 100% healthy. And, he's had a couple good games this season, but I don't know how much he would go for, especially in the low running back market that we're in now. So where do you go from that? You're not going to get a high draft pick. You already gave Seattle everything you have, including the foundation.
Literally.
You gave them everything. So I'm like, I don't know where you go from here.
Yeah, I mean, well, so they're more than likely gonna get rid of Russ.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna release him or cut him or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they do that, then they'll have trash
Nothing.
quarterback play for a little bit. Yeah, literally.
They're just going
And
to
I think
tank.
all they can pretty much that's all they really can do.
That's what I'm saying.
And hope that they can trade away Cortland Sutton to like a contending, playoff team,
Yep.
potential playoff team or something.
Take this fourth
Trade
round
away
pick.
Sertan. Literally. Well, okay. So did you you saw what they were trying to ask for Jerry Judy, right? They're asking for
Yeah.
like 2 first-round picks or something crazy. I was like, bro,
Wasn't that earlier in the season or
stop it.
like last season or something like that?
Yeah,
And then we had the
earlier in the
Steve Smith
season.
situation, and now he's a
Hmm.
wide receiver 4. It's like, damn. I mean, like Cortland Sutton, like
Literally.
he's had like a great year from like a Mike Evans like red zone monster perspective. I think he's like 12 red zone touchdowns, like tied with Mike Evans for the lead. But like other than, like he's not a super huge yardage guy. He used to be, but I mean, other than the
Yeah.
touchdowns, he hasn't. I mean, he hasn't been all that great. There's Jerry Jeudy, and you have Javonte. Like I said, like other than Patrick Surtain, I think he is the most valuable piece that you have, and people are going to be trying to buy low. So like, I'm not exactly sure what. I don't even think I wouldn't trade Patrick Surtain at this point. But I mean,
I
I don't really
mean,
know.
they like that's the thing though. Like they handcuff themselves, and they might have to at this point because they don't really have much of an option. Or maybe was it Jeffrey Simmons or something? I don't know, man. Like, they got to get rid of somebody and try and like piece together some picks and some like aging veterans so they can get some leadership in there when they get like these other 37 draft picks that they
Mm-hmm.
are gonna need to rebuild this whole roster. I'm not sure what Sean Payton's doing, honestly. um like of all teams to come back and try and turn around and stuff like that, I would have personally picked like the um well, granted, the Chargers weren't available at the time, but I would have much rather be in the position of taking on the Chargers than I would the Broncos, because at least with that team, you have elite level talent that's all going to be there, and you have elite level talent on the defense as well. They just haven't been able to be put in the right situation to win, and Justin Herbert's more of a Sean Payton type quarterback like Drew Brees, where he's just back there and more of a pocket passer, ready to sling it around, as opposed to Russ, who, yeah, he can sling it around and stuff too, but he relies on his elusivity in the pocket, and like you were saying before, the backyard plays and stuff too, to be able to find players open downfield and stuff. So I don't know what they're gonna do. They're screwed. Like,
Yeah, not a good spot, and not a good spot for Sean Payton. There was talk about a couple years ago, or maybe a few years ago, when Brady, before he went to the Bucks, like there was, or this might have been after too, about him teaming up with Sean Payton going to the Dolphins. This is when Tua
yeah,
looked like trash and all that kind of stuff. So I think that would have been a better situation. This has just been a terrible disaster for the Dolphins, and I understand maybe why the ownership, sold them to the Walmart family before maybe they saw the writing on the wall. They're like, let me get up out of here real quick and take this $5.6 billion.
Literally.
We did talk a little bit about the Patrick Mahomes and his comparison to Russ. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have been, it has not been pretty. They're 9-6 right now. They're 3-3 over their last couple games. They've lost to the Packers. They've lost to the Raiders. And it just has not looked great at all. And now there's a chance that they could potentially end up in a wild. No, I don't think that nobody's going to catch up to them in the division, I would say. But they are going to have to play on the road for the first time in like Patrick Mahomes' career if they end up going further in the Super Bowl or going further in the playoffs. But at this point, they do not look like an elite team within the AFC or within the NFL overall. So again, do you feel it's just more of the same with the Chiefs? They just don't seem to be clicking on all cylinders. Travis Kelce looks old. Rashee Rice has become the number one guy and he's getting the volume, but it's just not working out very well. I think the Raiders had very minimal passes. They only had like 2 or 3 passes in the second half all game, and they still ended up winning the game because they had like a pick 6 fumble or something like that, and like they scored twice on defense towards the end of the half. But it's just more bad play for the Chiefs. So, do you think that they're going to get things going?
One quick side note: Cortland Sutton has the second highest QB rating when he's been targeted this season.
He
So
only throws to him
yeah,
in the end zone. You 6'4". Take this. That's it.
so
He'll have
but
like
yeah.
2 yards.
Anyways,
He'll
but
have like 2 receptions for 24 yards and a touchdown. Like that's like what
legit,
that's where he goes.
legit, great fantasy day.
Right?
But yeah, so going back to what you were saying about the Chiefs, if they're going to turn it around or what's going to happen, they're going to have to like is like they don't have a choice at this point. Granted, again, with the drops and everything, Patrick Mahomes currently leads the, well, I guess technically he wouldn't really be leading it, but he has the most dropped passes from his wide receivers this
Yeah,
year.
they're not doing them any
So
favors.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, it looks like they finally started using Rashee Rice in the correct manner, having him be the new wide receiver one. I guess technically Kelsey is still wide receiver one, but true
He's been
wide
getting more
receiver.
volume than Kelsey too over the past month. A
Yeah,
lot more.
yeah, and so I think that's the direction that they're going to have to go because they're not like they're trying to make fetch happen. All right, they're trying to make somebody the new Tyreek Hill, and the reality is that's not going to happen. Like you're not gonna find another Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's one of a kind of player, and you got rid of him because you didn't want to adjust the contracts. You didn't want to make it work. So you're stuck with what you have, and what you have is trash. So like this is
Darius
your new
Tony.
reality. Exactly. So this is, and also with Kadarius Tony. Okay, I get, okay, dropped a couple passes or whatever the first game, does a little better the second game, and then after that dropped another pass, and the
You
dude's
could
got to
argue
go.
that he single-handedly lost them 2 games. They had the pick 6 with
Yeah,
the Lions and literally gave the Lions a touchdown, and then they had the basically arguably the game-winning touchdown. They would have had a chance to come back, but the game-winning touchdown drive, and then he lines up offsides. So
hmm I mean, yeah. So again, it takes more than just one player that to do what has happened to the Chiefs. Like Mahomes also isn't playing his best. This is one of his statistical worst seasons that he's had since he's been in the league. He has 14 interceptions right now, and only 26 touchdowns. Usually we're used to seeing, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he does have like, 10 to 12 interceptions, but he also has like 40 touchdowns or like
yeah,
38 touchdowns or
he's
something.
coming off the MVP season
Um,
too. So
yeah. And I'm still kicking myself that I paid $80 in Fab or actually it was $50 in Fab to draft this guy in an auction draft, and it
yeah,
was a terrible idea. But
I thought I was doing big things in my fantasy league. Oh yeah, I'm gonna stack Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey. Yep, should have just took Laporta off of waivers in week 1.
yeah, like I did
Yep.
exactly. But I mean, yeah, the Chiefs, they're I want to say that they're still the Chiefs. But I can't confidently say that anymore because their offense isn't holding up their end of the bargain. Their defense has been playing great. I mean, for God's sakes, Aiden O'Connell he didn't complete a pass in the in the second half. Like
Hmm.
so, like after the first quarter, I don't think he completed a pass. There were nine completions in the whole game. So like they're doing their job, but the offense for once is not doing anything, and that's the problem. It's been the problem the whole year. We've always said it's going to turn around. They'll figure it out. But we're on what, week 17 now? This is who they are. So
Yeah, this is facts. I don't think, as we mentioned, the Raiders are going to catch up to them. There's only 2 games left in the season. The Raiders are 2 games back, so the Chiefs would have to lose out. The Raiders would have to win out. But the Raiders have been playing pretty good, and they've played themselves almost into a wild card spot. So they're sitting tied for a wild card spot with Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach, and he's kind of gotten that team reinvigorated and inspired. Seems like every single win that they have is like a Super Bowl. They're smoking cigars, and Max Crosby's going crazy every single time that they win the game. But it looks like it's going to be, yeah, they would. So the Colts are ahead of them. There's 3 teams ahead of them right now for the last wild card spot. So it doesn't seem very likely, but it has been an entertaining story. Staying in the AFC, well, I guess it was a AFC NFC matchup. We did have the Miami Dolphins face against the Dallas Cowboys. That was a very entertaining game. People thought, well, I thought it too. It would tell us a lot about what these teams are. It didn't necessarily go as I expected. The Dolphins ended up squeaking out a win, 20-22. The Cowboys had a lot of opportunities that they let slide. They had a potential run on the 1 yard line with Tony Pollard, and he couldn't. It looked like it was wide open, but he's like, you know what, I'm going to try to break it in, and then basically could not get into the end zone, and they didn't end up scoring on that drive. So ended up being 20-22. Jalen Waddle ended up getting hurt in this game. Tyreek Hill still battling through injury, but the Dolphins did find a way. Tua found a way. And now the Cowboys have lost 2 straight games to the Dolphins and to the Bills after it was looking like Dak Prescott could wrap up the MVP. The Cowboys look like the best team in the NFL. Now they're kind of going through their own problem and woes as well. So what are your thoughts on that game, Drew? And what are your thoughts on the Cowboys and Dolphins going forward, playoff-wise?
yeah, I mean, this game went exactly how I thought it was going to go.
Oh, really?
I had the I mean, I had the Dolphins, man. I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you. And
I still
had the
think the
Dolphins in this
Cowboys are a better
game,
team.
and
And I don't like the Cowboys,
I
but
mean,
I don't know.
maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just think um, matchup wise, it was just not a good fit for the Cowboys because they run man more than any team in the league, and what you cannot do is run man against fast people. Like Tyreek Hill, like you, you put anybody matched up 1-on-1 with Tyreek Hill, I'm me myself, I will throw it to him 100% of the time, and I will complete that pass 100% of the time because he's going to be wide open down the field, and so it's just that easy. And it was kind of funny because the first half, I think like Tyreek Hill had like 2 catches for like 15 yards or something crazy, and then like the commentators, they were like, "Oh yeah, Tyreek Hill hasn't really been a real pivotal part of the game," and then he ends up finishing with 9 for 99. So like he he's always open, and even when he's not open, you can throw it to him behind the line, and he'll at least get 5 yards. Um, and not only that, the one of the spots where you can piece apart the Cowboys, where I thought that the Dolphins would have success, and they did, was on the ground. Because ultimately, when you have a team that likes to blitz a lot, one of the best things you can do is run the ball to kind of keep them honest in that sense. And sure enough, Raheem Mostert and Achan were able to hold up their end of the bargain and get the job done. Now, Tua was Tua, and he didn't make every pass, but he made enough passes. And um, he actually does a lot better when he is pressured, and when he does have blitzes coming into him, because that leaves somebody wide open, and you just throw it into the blitz because he's basically, I don't want to say he's just relies on anticipation, but he
Yeah.
mostly relies on
He's a time
anticipation
thrower.
and knowing
Yeah.
exactly. And so if you and he has one of the quickest releases in the league too. So if you're not getting to him
Looks
and
gross.
you're yeah, and you're trying to blitz them and stuff too. Like it's just a bad combo because then you're leaving the back end of the defense open and vulnerable, and also you have these fast mofo's running down the field with one-on-one coverage. It's not a good combo. So
Yeah, it does seem like it is a bad matchup for the Cowboys, as you said. They like to blitz, they like to press, they like to go man, and with the Dolphins, you can't really do that. And they do that because their defensive line has always been elite. They've been able to get pressure with Micah Parsons and with the rest of the defensive line, but they weren't able to really do that much this game. They only got one sack on Tua with 5 QB hits. So I agree with you. They weren't able to get the pressure that they're used to, and then Tua was able to. I was gonna say I don't think he played great or anything like that, but the Dolphins as a whole made timely plays. They didn't run the ball immaculate. They only had about 3.7 yards of carry and only ran for 91 yards, but they had timely first downs and they're able to take control when they did have the lead. And the Cowboys just weren't able to capitalize. CD Lamb seemed like he was primed to have a big game. He had like 4 or 5 receptions for 100 yards with a touchdown in the first half. I think he only got 1 or 2 receptions after that. So Dak Prescott was forced to try to spread the ball around and just didn't have much success. And the Dolphins were able to hold on. So going forward now, the Cowboys are facing the Lions this upcoming weekend, which is going to be a very big game for them and a big game for the Lions overall when it comes to standings within the playoffs. And the Lions now are 11-4 quietly, it seems like. But yeah, and the Dolphins continue to go on their hot streak. They're 11-4, and they have the Ravens this game, who are coming off of a very good win against the 49ers, which was the second big primetime game that we had this week. Ravens 49ers, and the Ravens ended up completely destroying the 49ers. I was very surprised about that. The game was close to begin with. It was a lot of going back and forth. There was a safety. There was a lot of defensive plays. And then the Ravens ended up taking control, and Brock Purdy ended up throwing 4 interceptions on the game. And they weren't able to do anything other than with Christian McCaffrey. Lamar Jackson was able to control the game. They were able to run the ball, got another 100-yard game. Zay Flowers, again, has been a great rookie for them and has now basically been the go-to guy, especially with Odell not battling through injury, not being as great as he was throughout the midway through the season, and with Mark Andrews still out. Thoughts on that, Drew? Watching the game, like I still felt that the 49ers were just as good of a team, if not the better team. And on paper, it seems like they're still the better team. But Baltimore just seems to have a system in place, and it's been working for them all season. And now that Lamar Jackson has kind of flourished into a dual threat quarterback and doesn't necessarily always have to run, only had 7 carries for this game for about 50 yards. He's able to stay in the pocket. He's able to dissect the defense. And on defense, they're playing elite. So thoughts on that, and what are your expectations for the 49ers and Ravens going forward? Potential Super Bowl matchup?
yeah, I mean, I want to toot my own horn, but there's another game where I just thought that the line was just being disrespectful to the Ravens, and the Ravens themselves said it as much too. They said that
Was
I
it
don't
six
know
and a
why
half, five and a
we're.
half?
It got up to 6.5 at the start
That
of the
was
game.
very rude.
Like that's you're telling me that the difference between the top 2 teams in the league is 6. Well, I guess it would be home field advantage, 3 points, whatever. So it'd
Still,
be basically 3.5 points. I don't think that the 49ers are 3.5 points better on a neutral than the Baltimore Ravens, and I sure as hell don't think that they're 6.5 point underdogs to the 49ers either. And so that was like one of the easiest picks I made. I got it early on in the week at 5.5, and then it started moving against me, and I was like, that's weird. I usually don't like to see a line move against me, but then I put another bet in at 6.5. I was like, this is ridiculous. This has gone way too far. Um, and both of them ended up working out just fine, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have been pretty sad. Anyways, and as far as your boy Brock Purdy, MVP, worst to first kind of guy, like I, the one thing he could have not done to to still manage to be in the conversation for MVP, which I think he still should be in the conversation. Like one game is doesn't
yeah.
just eliminate you, but I mean when you no touchdowns, 4 picks, have a QB rating of 42.6. You're 18 of 32 passing. Like
It could have been worse too. The Ravens DBs, they dropped a couple picks, and
yeah.
it got bad.
And so I think the main difference too was that because ultimately 49ers were moving the ball down the field. right? And it was just the timely interceptions that they had. It was deflected passes that were batted up in the air and then intercepted. It was, fumbles at the wrong time and everything just all at once just regressed at the worst possible time for the 49ers. And and when it comes to the offensive line and stuff too, Trent Williams is the biggest difference maker for this 49ers team. And when he's not in the game because he got injured early on, when he's not in there, they are a completely different team. And you saw that too because like every every half second after the ball was snapped, there was somebody in the backfield greeting Brock Purdy. And like you can't run an offense when you can't even get anybody down the field further than 5 yards. Granted, they're known for yards after the catch and everything too, but it's really hard to run an offense that way. And you saw it happen. And I think that, we're going to pencil this away as okay, they blew them out that one time and stuff. But at the same time, it just goes to show that Harbaugh can, rally the troops and get them motivated for just about any game. But the problem that the Ravens have had this year is those letdown spots after those big wins, and not being consistent with maintaining multiple convincing wins back to back. So
Yeah, I agree with you. Going off of Brock Purdy, this probably nixed any MVP. He'll probably, as you mentioned, he'll probably still finish top 3, top 5, get some MVP votes, but I don't think that there's a chance of him getting the MVP now. Same with Dak Prescott. Now that he's had his 2-game losing streak, I think that Lamar Jackson's firmly in the MVP conversation and likely will win it. And I think that this game, as you mentioned, just ended up falling apart for the 49ers. And it seemed like everything that would go wrong or could go wrong did. Pass deflections, interceptions, as you mentioned. And it kind of seemed like the last game that the Eagles and Cowboys had, like everything, the Eagles were moving the ball, everything that could go wrong did. They'd get a big chunk play and then Hurts would fumble the ball, or AJ Brown fumbled the ball, Devontae Smith fumbled the ball. It just seemed like it just wasn't their day. It kind of seemed like it was similar situation here against the Baltimore. I do believe that this, if were to happen in the playoffs, a Super Bowl matchup, this would be a much closer game, and I think that it would be a lot different. I'm not saying that the Ravens wouldn't win. I'm just saying that fully healthy, it still seems that the 49ers are just as good of a team. But right now, the Ravens currently sit atop the NFL overall when it comes to their 12-3 record, and I think that also goes to show that this is just like going to be a very entertaining season because you don't know there's no clear favorite now. The 49ers have lost games, the Eagles have lost games, the Chiefs aren't what they used to be. Now the Ravens are good, the Cowboys are good, the Lions are good, and now you have the Bills coming out of nowhere and they're on a hot streak too. So it kind of seems like it could be anybody's game, and it's all going to come down to just how it works in the playoffs. So it'll be a very fun and entertaining playoffs. Other games that you wanted to get into over the past week or two?
um no, I believe that about does it there. The one game that I thought was kind of interesting was that Bills Chargers game. We had the Chargers plus 12 and a half. I
Mm-hmm.
was hoping we would get up to 13 and a half, but whatever. I'll take 12 and a half. Didn't matter that they
Greed.
won only lost by two.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was like the perfect opportunity to back the Chargers in this spot. They just got absolutely clapped the last game that they played against the Raiders. And the coach got fired, and just a perfect storm. The Bills coming off a big win too, and like it was the easiest pick you could have made. Granted, like I don't think Easton Stick is going to be the answer for the Chargers going forward. Um,
Why not?
but well, when he's trying to do his best Sam Howell impersonation to where he just every other pass or every other snap he gets sacked, and then
Mm-hmm.
occasionally he'll complete a pass or two, and then oh no, I gotta go get sacked again real quick. I can't have known I'm too good, and
Mm-hmm.
then incomplete passes and way overthrowing people and stuff. He's not good. But moral of the story is this was just like the perfect letdown spot for the Bills and Josh Allen. And they almost ended up losing this game outright, but they ended up ultimately getting the job done. And Austin Eckler finally had a little bit of a, well, let's just say a better game. At 65 rushing yards, but he still looks slow.
Yeah, they're not
So
resigning him. I don't know what the situation is going to be for Austin Eckler next year. It kind of sucks though too, because like you can go from being like an elite running back, or even if you want to talk about fantasy, an elite fantasy running back, and then the next season you're Dalvin Cook, and you're just on the Jets, just sitting on the bench. And I don't want to say that's the reality that Austin Eckler is going to be in, but it's going to be more closer to that than the elite, offensive player of the year candidate that we've been used to seeing from Austin Eckler over the past 2 or 3 seasons, which is a little unfortunate, but it is just the reality when it does come to running backs. The last thing that I did want
I
to
think
get,
one
so what?
thing I was gonna say, I think another thing that's kind of funny too is there's this website, RB's DM, which is RB's running backs don't matter.com. They're like one of the main pages for one of the
I'm
main
the
pages
founder.
for like okay. They're one of the main pages for like EPA and offensive success rate and rush success rate and those kind of things. Um, and so like I just think it's hilarious that the website name is running backs don't matter. So
It,
yeah.
it,
Anyways,
it really does suck for running backs because, like, we've talked about that multiple times over the podcast. Like, it's such a young player position. So they're just like, okay, we'll just go into third round and get this guy that we're just going to run to the ground for the next 2 or 3 seasons, unless like you have like one of those, generational or like, decade type players like a Bijan who they're not even using, or like a Jameer
hmm
Gibbs, things like that, and who is sharing time with Dave Montgomery. There's not any or many true workhorse running backs unless your name's Christian McCaffrey and you just like a robot. But other than that, that's pretty
legit.
much it. There's been a lot of running backs like Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook. So a lot of these Pro Bowl running backs that we're used to seeing are now starting to fade away. It's kind of sad and unfortunate.
Even like
Uh,
Zeke too.
Zeke too. That's what I'm saying. He had one good game
hmm
as a Patriots though. But side note, Tony Pollard, for this being like his, the
Dude,
backfield yours, the volume's yours. It has been probably one of the biggest disappointments for fantasy, but just one of the biggest disappointments overall. As we mentioned, he had a 1 yard touchdown, potential touchdown run, and if he would have beat them to the pylon, he probably would have easily walked in. He's like, "Nah, let me cut it inside." Directly into the quarterback and not get any yardage. And it's been very disappointing. It's kind of been masked by the success that the Cowboys have had, but it has not looked great for Tony Pollard this season.
yeah, and as somebody that was
I
very
drafted
high
Tony
on Tony
Pollard as well.
Pollard, yeah, you know, it's very frustrating. I'm glad. Well, I mean, the other side of it too was I was very high on him and also on Jameer Gibbs, and neither of which ended up
Jameer
being
Gibbs
all
had a
that
good stretch.
great.
Like where I think he had
I
like
mean,
25
yeah,
straight for like
had
four
a good
games.
stretch and everything, but I
Mm,
I want rookie of the year. God damn it! I don't want good
okay.
stretch. I want rookie of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't really even in contention at all this whole year, and I mean, I don't know. I'm just sour, but that's fine. I can live.
The last thing I wanted to get into is this Cinderella story, if you will. You had the Cleveland Browns who lost Nick Chubb in week 1 or week 2 of the NFL season when his knee got completely torn to shreds. Then you had Deshaun Watson battling
Ground
through
beef.
injuries and his shoulder injury and everything like that, rotator cuff, all that stuff. And then he basically got sat for the rest of the season. So you're like, the Browns have this great defense, have this elite defense, and at times many people are saying that it was historic, but have nothing to show for it because their two arguably best players are now going to be out for the rest of the season. And then insert Joe Flacco, and he has now gone on a 4 win streak, and has the Browns firmly in the playoff position. And they are sitting with one of the best records in the NFL at 11-5. Joe Flacco has been playing very solidly. I think about 12 touchdowns, about 8 interceptions over the past 4 or 5 weeks, and the Browns defense has been very good. Had a 37-20 win over the Jets last night, and again, they are firmly in playoff position, albeit these last 4 wins have come against the Jaguars, who were a solid team at the time. This was about a month ago, so they beat the Jaguars, they beat the Bears, the Texans, and the Jets. So it's a 4-0 win. Joe Flacco, I think it's a great story. I don't know what to expect from the Browns. They kind of scare me coming out of the AFC because they have a great defense, and then Joe Flacco has proven like once he gets into the playoffs, he's like, oh, forget I'm Peyton Manning now, and just is elite. He's kind of like the Eli Manning, like, very good quarterbacks in the regular season and stuff, but they just kind of turn into different animals when they get to the playoffs. So yeah, the Browns have been very entertaining. Mari Cooper had damn near 300 yards a couple weeks ago, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I dude, your guess is as good as mine as what's gonna
I
happen
have
with
no
this
idea.
team. Like they like yeah, I have no idea. Right now, Stefanski is the co-favorite for rookie of the year for coach of the year with Dan Campbell
Yeah, with who?
at plus 175. Okay,
My
whatever.
coach of the year.
Yep. um, I mean, you won the division. Congrats. Let's see if you can keep it up. But
They ain't in the
yeah, I
division
mean,
in Baltimore.
what? No, I'm
Who's-
talking about your Lions.
Oh yeah, go Lions.
Yep. I think it's hilarious too that the last time, actually, this is the first time that they've ever won the NFC North because the last time they won the division, it wasn't called the NFC North. So, yeah. Anyways, going back to the Browns, the Browns, like, yeah, it's been a miracle season, and it just kind of goes to show that you're really only as good as your head coach, and as good as your head coach can be in putting you in those positions to win is the most important thing. And you saw the complete opposite of that with Atlanta this year, not putting anybody in position to win ever, and a lot of their wins just happened to be on luck and by chance.
And by playing the same.
Granted, same thing. Yeah, well, that too. And granted, the same thing could be said about some of their losses. Like a couple weeks ago, I was on the Falcons money line, and they had the ball on the 10-yard line against the Panthers, and just run the ball. And there's like 2 minutes left in the game. Run the ball. No, Desmond Ritter drops back to pass, throws it directly as thrown to a defender as you can throw it. Basically handed it to him, picked it off. Bryce Young, for once in his life, goes down. I think it was like 95 yards, wins the game, and the rest is history. And that pretty much solidified the fact that uh, uh, your boy Arthur he's not going to be back next year. Um, Regardless of however the season finishes, he's not going to be back because he's not using anybody correctly. On the flip side, you have the Browns, who Stefanski is just pressing all the right buttons and at all the right times too. And it also does help that you have a very elite defense on the other side that helps slow down opposing offenses. Now, going into the postseason is going to be a whole nother story because you're not going to have just like the Jets to go against and the injured Justin Fields and
Mhm.
like all these other you know lower tier teams to go against. You're going to have to play against the Lamar Jacksons of the world, the uh wow, my brain
In the
scattered.
second round, they'd likely
um
have to play the Dolphins or the Chiefs.
yeah, exactly. So you're about to go against Mahomes, to Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen. Like it's not going to be a cakewalk like it was before, and it's really going to the defense is going to be put. You're gonna lose me, man. Shit.
I hope you guys
Something
have
in this
enjoyed
air.
this podcast. This may or may not be Drew's last episode.
It's great. You go ahead, man. You go ahead. I'm gonna
No,
take
I
this
understand what
water.
you're
So
saying. I think it is major kudos to the head coach, Stefanski, and it goes to show, as you mentioned, what coaching can do. They are 11-5 with this vaunted defense, but they've had to play four different quarterbacks. They've lost their starting running back. They've had to play with Jerome Ford, who's filled in very formidably for them. But once they get to the postseason, they actually have to play against these elite offenses like potentially like the Ravens, like the Dolphins, like the Chiefs. Maybe they luck out and have to end up playing the Jaguars or something like that if somebody gets an upset win or something like that. But I don't have high expectations for them, but they've been a Cinderella story up to this point. So, I mean, who's to say that they can't keep it rolling in the postseason? Because one thing that you usually do want to depend on when it comes to the postseason is your defense. So, out of all of the teams within the AFC, I would argue, other than Baltimore, Chiefs every once in a while, they would probably have, I would say that they clearly have the best defense, if not one of the best defenses within the AFC. So, now that I think we have Drew back, any
Yep,
closing thoughts on that?
I'm still alive, barely, kind of, at least for now.
That's I think that was pretty much it when it comes to the NFL. Unless there was anything else that you wanted to get into, or any potential bets that you wanted to call out ahead of time, or just could put them on line.
Um, yeah, I got a couple, as always. You know me.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, did you have any before I
I got some.
give the rundown?
You always say that mine are questionable. I would happen to agree with you on these ones. I don't like it, but I'm still gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take Seattle, but I'm gonna take a money line because they're a 3.5 point favorite right now. And as we
You're
were talking
learning.
about before this episode start, Seattle has not beaten a team by more than 4 points in about 10 weeks. So as Drew and I were talking about, we either get mollywopped and destroyed by double digits by a good team, or we squeak out these ugly wins. But they're still wins. They still count towards the same. So I would
They're
take
still a win,
Seattle over the
nevertheless.
Steelers money line. It's gross to say that we have the exact same record as the Steelers right now. They're sitting at 8-7 with Kenny Pickett and all of their dysfunction that they've had over the past season. But as we've talked about before, Mike Tomlin will find a way to be 500 or better, no matter what the circumstances.
I guess the oh man, I don't hate it. I kind of like
Yep.
it actually.
Yep.
Um,
That's not what I was talking about, but continue.
yeah. I mean, especially because last week the Steelers had a huge win over a divisional opponent, and also I think they might be kind of looking ahead to another divisional game that they have coming up next week as
They
well.
better not
And
be. We both need to win out to secure our chances to make the playoffs. So
yeah, well, I mean, I just think that um, you know, coming off of a blowout victory, like it's a major letdown spot uh for the Steelers right now. I you know what? I'm locking it up too. I love it. It can
okay,
be our consensus pick right there.
here we go.
What can go wrong? Um,
Yep.
but yeah. So along with that one, I I'm looking at this game here with my Saints
Oh
taking
boy.
on the Buccaneers, and
Do not. Do not.
I'm
You better take the Bucks. I swear to God, if you take the Saints.
I'm gonna take the Bucks. Don't
Okay.
worry.
There we go.
'Cause I mean, this is as lazy of a handicap as you can get on a game. Is Marshawn Lattimore playing? No. Okay. That means Mike Evans is going to have a 500,000 yards receiving against the Saints, and they're going to win by 37. So
Okay.
that's literally the only way that the Saints ever have a chance against the Buccaneers. It's because they're able to slow down Mike Evans. I don't know what Marshawn Lattimore does to Mike Evans. He's living rent free in that man's head, but he's not playing this game. He's out. So give me the Buccaneers. Worst case scenario, Saints win and we become even more mediocre, and we still probably won't make it into the playoffs. Probably won't win the division. Probably won't win anything else ever again. And like I said, I'm looking for a new team. Maybe I'll be a Bucks fan after this game. I don't know. Um, I just they they're missing McCoy on the offensive line, Turner defensive end. Kamara's banged up a little bit. Ramchek's still out. I mean, Michael Thomas, he who knows who knows what that man's doing nowadays. Lattimore's still gone. And meanwhile, on the other side, yeah, you got Shaq Barrett that's hurt. Carlton Davis is hurt. Um, and then you got some random tight end I've never even heard of that's hurt. So he doesn't even matter. Sorry to whoever you are. Um, like for the most part, Buccaneers are healthy and they've been playing very good football as of late. The Saints can't get anybody in the backfield in terms of a pass rush, and they sure as hell can't slow down a opposing defense without Marshawn Lattimore. Like it's got to be the Bucks or nothing. So give me the Bucks money line. I'm not messing around with that 2.5 BS, especially in a divisional game. So lock it up.
Fair enough. I would probably agree with that. Even going back to week 4 when the Bucks and Saints played each other, the first division game, Marshawn Lattimore played. Mike Evans only had 3 receptions for 40 yards, and the Bucks won by 20. So,
Mm-hmm.
sounds
The thing
about
that
right.
scares me though is it's very similar to that Seahawks game
It's a
to
trap. It's
where
kind of a trap
80
game.
yeah 82% of the bets are on the Buccaneers, 18% are on the Saints. So it's very that is very scary.
I
Um,
don't. I don't know how the
but
final tiebreaker would work, but if the Saints were, if you guys were to win this game, then I think that as long as how would that work? I think that you guys would be tied for the division lead, but I don't know if you guys would have the final tiebreaker or not. I'm not exactly sure how that would work
mm,
because you guys would both be 8-8. So I think it would just depend on, and if Atlanta won this week too, then all 3 of you guys would be 8-8. So I don't know who has the final tiebreaker with you guys. I think it would be the Bucks, but not positive. My last one, the thing that I think that you may think is a little bit controversial. You know what? They haven't had a good big win all season. They have a great record. Um, but
oh boy,
a lot of people aren't giving them the props that they deserve. Dan Campbell and all that kind of stuff. Give me the Lions plus 5.5 against Dallas. Thank
wow,
you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
wow.
Thank you very much. Cowboys about to go 0
I mean,
3. You know what I'm saying? And it'll be fitting too because the Lions are finally going to shut the door on your little potential Cowboys having a chance to win the division. So I can get my bet and win my bet. You know what I'm saying? And the Lions can have a nice win going into the playoffs, a little bit of confidence because they've just been beaten up on these lower tier teams. Every time they've had to play a good team or the Seahawks, they've lost. So this will be their game. Plus, I'll take the 5.5 points too.
wow. I mean, okay, so normally I'd be all for, or actually, normally I'd be all for taking the Cowboys in this game because I mean they just won the division for the first time, and since my I don't know grandparents were kids, so
50s.
this is exactly so like this is this is the perfect spot to fade the Lions. However, they put the line they opened the line up at 6, and now it's at 5.5, and I cannot justify laying 6 points with the
That's what I'm
Cowboys
saying.
in this spot. Granted, they are much better at home, and I just I don't know.
I think they're
It's
undefeated at home
a
this year so far.
wouldn't doubt it.
Yep.
They're trash on in away games, but they're great at home.
Yep.
Um,
7-0 on
but
home.
yeah, and the main thing too is your boy Dan Campbell. He gets his team up to play every night. Like he doesn't matter. His players will run through a brick wall for him if he asks them to. So I don't think that there can really be a letdown spot in this position. Um, Granted, they do have, I believe it's Minnesota coming up next, and that'll help
Mm-hmm.
solidify, close the door on just the dominant season that they've had this year. But yeah, I want to disagree with you, but I really can't right now. And I mean the bet splits can't point me in any direction either. Like it's 51-49 right now. So um yeah, I don't hate it. I don't
And
like it, but I don't hate it.
it's kind of crazy when we've talked about the 49ers and the Cowboys and the Eagles. The Lions are just quietly tied for the best record in the NFC. And if they were to win this game, and there is a potential path for them to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, which
Yeah.
is kind of crazy because I don't think they've
The
played
door is
anybody
still
good.
open.
I don't think they've beaten anybody good. That's the kind of I think their best win this season has been against the Broncos when the Broncos were riding high, which is kind of crazy.
Hmm.
I really do think that has
Hmm.
been their best win because they got that's it. Oh well, I guess the Chiefs in the week 1, so I guess they did beat the
Yeah.
Chiefs.
One thing too that I think is going to really help the um the Lions is their advantage on the run game.
Mm-hmm.
So according to Pro Football Focus, 51% advantage when it comes to running the ball against Dallas for the Detroit Lions. I think that that is going to be a major point And we saw that the past few games where teams have been able to have success against them has been on the ground because you sure as hell can't necessarily pass against them, and they have most teams haven't had much success doing that. But where they can be had is on the uh, offensive and defensive line when it comes to rushing the ball. So I think that's going to be a major point of emphasis for Jameer Gibbs to get involved, and also for my boy RB1 David Montgomery also getting involved down there too. So something to look for. And if that wasn't enough, too, the Detroit Lions, they don't really like to pass the ball that much. They are actually fourth in the league when it comes to, or sorry, misread that. They're 11th in the league when it comes to rush frequency, and they're fourth in the league when it comes to rush success. So, and on the flip side, Dallas is 22nd when it comes to being able to stop and defend the run. So,
yeah, great two-headed monster out of the backfield with Dave Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs. They are very both versatile in their own rights, and then I think that sets up the play action very well for them. They like to throw it to Amaral. And Sam Laporta, as we've talked about, has been a godsend for the Lions. It's kind of weird because I guess he was a high drafted tight end out of the draft this last year, not for fantasy, but just in reality. But I don't think people thought Hawkinson was good, but you're not just gonna plug and play just a different tight end. He's just gonna be just as, if not better. But he really has been for them and has been a great addition for them. And they have a very, very elite, very balanced offense for the most part. So I do think that they will at least be able to cover against Dallas, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anything else that you wanted to get into within the NFL?
Oh, but of course, Mr. Harris.
Let's hear it.
I think I have a couple,
Okay.
and then I'll leave the others for the weekend. um, one 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 last hoorah for the the NFC South. We're gonna go with Atlanta. See if Arthur Smith can bring home the bacon against
I
this
don't like it.
against this Chicago team.
Money line?
So all right,
Like two and
actually,
a half?
as
The Falcons
you know
been
what,
known to win and lose games by single, like 1 or 2 points. So that's what scares me.
I was good. I'll take 2.5.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I don't trust them. They might not win, but they'll at least keep it close,
Just so
as they
Fields can
always
run
do.
all over y'all.
Maybe that is very
Maybe.
possible. Uh, but on the other side, though, Cole Kmet injured, questionable. Darnell Mooney
That's what I'm saying. You got
hurt,
nobody pass to.
out,
I'm Walter Payton now.
and DJ Moore also was banged up too at the end of that game. And when he came back in, yeah, sure, he like they were calling it a high ankle sprain, but he came back into the game and he was out there running some routes, but he was
It,
more so of a decoy than he
it did
was
not look good.
actually getting
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that you give me Justin Fields against the world, and he has nobody else to pass the ball to.
Jimmy Graham.
Secretly, if I okay, I guess that's only really option. Like secretly, the Bears have actually been playing a lot better on the defensive end, and same and the opposite kind of with the Falcons. However, when it comes to the game is won in the trenches. So when it comes to advantages on the offensive line, the Atlanta Falcons have a 27% advantage when it comes to pass protection and 43% advantage when it comes to run blocking success against the Chicago Bears, whereas the Bears have a 10% advantage when it comes to pass success and a negative 17% disadvantage when it comes to rush success. And as we know, the Bears are one of the most run heavy teams in the league. And if that's their major thing they love to do and they're not able to do it, I'm no statistician, but that tells me that they're not going to have success in the game. So give me, you know what? Give me the Falcons money line. We'll do it. We'll lock it up. I think Arthur Smith playing for his job right there. Taylor Heineke out there slinging that thing around. And I think he'll get the job done. And maybe they'll be my other my new team instead of the Bucks. So whichever one can get me the W. Hopefully both of them do, but just need one of them to come through for me.
I
right
do
there.
not want to be a Falcons fan because I'm frustrated just from a fantasy owner perspective because I don't the way that they're mistreating Bijan Robinson should be a federal offense. I don't like it. He has basically the same amount of carries as Tyler Algier. Literally, Bijan has 13 more carries than Tyler Algier this season. Has nearly 250 more yards and is averaging basically 1 yard a carry better than Algier. Obviously, they're using him more in the pass game as he has 30 more receptions, but I think that Bijan was projected like 1,350 rushing yards. He's currently sitting at 870. So it's been kind of just a very frustrating and disappointing season for Bijan, and it kind of sucks because it's not his fault. It's just he's in the doghouse as soon as he came into the league. I don't understand what the Falcons were doing. I don't understand how they started training camp and they saw what they had at quarterback and they're like Desmond Ritter. Yeah, that's the guy. I don't know.
Yep.
And put in Taylor Heineke, and they're like, oh wait, no, he's not good either. Put Desmond Ritter back in. They're like, oh wait, I forgot he's bad. Let's put in Taylor Heineke again. I don't understand what they're doing.
Legit. It's it's not great, Bob. Um, Moving on to the next game that I have on the card is going to be the Raiders against the Indianapolis Colts.
Mm.
Look,
Gardner Minshew, we
the
trust,
Raiders
bro.
exactly. The Raiders, they were crying in the locker room, smoking cigars again, and like that was basically their Super Bowl. They just won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs last week, and all of that just to say that like Aiden O'Connell is trash. He is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen in my.
He looks
He's
so weird.
not
I'm sorry.
yeah, and like not only that, the the touchdowns that they scored were defensive touchdowns.
Yeah,
Like they weren't doing anything on offense,
that's
and
why
they
they don't
haven't
need
done
to.
anything on. I guess the only time that they've done anything on offense was against a team that quit on their coach, and they literally just gave the game away.
True.
So I you're telling me it's only 3.5, and I'm going up against Aiden O'Connell, who had 62 passing yards, only had 9 completions in the whole game, and didn't have a completion, I don't think, after the first quarter. Like, no, no, absolutely not. Sure, Max Crosby's going to get in there and disrupt whatever. I don't care. Um, and again, the game is won in the trenches, right? So we go over to our handy dandy offensive line, defensive line matchups. And here, you don't really see much of an advantage here with the um, Raiders with -6 on the in terms of pass protection, and the uh, against the Colts rush defense. They only have a 3% advantage there, and then the Colts with a -9% on passing, and then -8 on rush. So sure, no advantage there. However, you take it a step further, and you take a note and notice that quietly the Colts have been one of the best offenses in the league over the past few weeks, whereas the Raiders have been one of the worst passing defenses in the league the whole year. So I'm trusting my boy, Mr. Stash himself, Gardner Minshew, to go in there, get the job done. 3.5 is the spread. I'm taking it. And especially because the line moved a half point in my favor, and they're only getting 29% of the bets against the Super Bowl champion Raiders. Lock it up. Give me the Colts.
I like it.
Thank
I
you.
like it.
That's my
And
thesis.
also have confirmation that Josh Jacobs is now doubtful for this game with his quad injury. Even
Good.
though Zamir White did fill in very formidably against the Chiefs because he rushed for 150 yards against the Chiefs on 22 carries, which I did not know until now. But he ran for 6.6 yards a carry against the Chiefs. Oh, but yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Anything or any other ones that you want to get into? And you said what was our record last week when it came to the picks?
Yeah, so last week, we absolutely demolished the books. We went 12-2, and we even got lucky with one of our picks when we had the Seahawks. Alex had the money line with the Seahawks, and then I had Tennessee plus 3.5. So we got both of those landed perfectly on three. That's just
Is
that
this a
sharp
trap week
action
for
that we
us
just love
now?
to see.
Does that mean that
Dude, I know. is risky business out here. That's why I'm trying to tread lightly, protect the profit. um, but yeah, the one last one that I'm gonna get to here is gonna be our Denver Broncos taking on the Chargers here, and I mean the stench of Easton Stick is going to catch up with them here. I thought that this would happen sooner when it came to Danny DeVito, and we didn't really talk about Danny DeVito getting whacked, but he's gone. He's out of the system, and now insert Easton Stick over in the LA area, and he's the new hot, sexy thing that's going around there. So I think that um, this is going to be just a bloodbath for Easton Stick. He is not a good quarterback in any way, shape, or form. Can't really make accurate throws. Decision making has been slow, and he also takes a bunch of sacks. On the flip side, you have the Denver Broncos, who are known for attacking the quarterback. And this is not going to end well for the Chargers. They already are without their I don't want to call him a Hall of Fame quarterback, but their Pro Bowl quarterback. I almost called him Josh Allen. Why can't I think of his name?
Russell,
It's gone. Lost it. Nope. Chargers.
Justin
Can't
Herbert.
even, oh, Herbert. There we go. Yep. Can't even think of his name anymore because he's been out for so long. Anyways,
Sad.
um, yep. Chargers already without him. They're gonna be without Keenan Allen again, and we already know how we feel about your boy Austin Eckler missing a step. On top of
Yeah.
that, they they they're not able to protect anybody, and they sure as hell cannot protect Easton Stick and his poor decision making either. Give me the Denver Broncos, who have an advantage on the offensive line when it comes to rush and defense, or rushing and also passing as well, with 17% and 27% respectively. Easy pick. Bait them, love them, take them.
So you got your
Broncos.
Broncos. Let's ride.
Let's ride.
I think this will be somewhat I don't know if people would expect it, but I think this will be somewhat of a motivating game for the Broncos, or at least for Sean Payton from a coaching perspective, because he made the decision to bench Russell. You want to kind of prove everybody wrong, because it's not like you need to tank this season, so you're like going to put everything that you can into this game. And as you mentioned, it is against the decimated Chargers, so I don't mind that pick at all. So, anything else that you wanted to get into within the NFL before we hop on to National Basketball Association?
I believe that is everything for now. I'll probably, knowing myself, I'll probably add one or two more before the games start. So, yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah, that's all I got too. I think the only other thing is just making sure you're liking, subscribing, doing all the things, making sure you're downloading the podcast. That's one of the biggest things too, because that's where you get the metrics. For some reason, it doesn't show listens on Buzzsprout, which is what we use to kind of track that stuff. Don't show it on there, which is kind of dumb, but it does show it on YouTube, as you know. So don't forget, we're also over there. Do you have anything else, my good sir?
Nope. We still also have our Instagram, and you can find the link to our YouTube podcast and the picks through our app. Or through the app that we use. Other than that, that's pretty much it. This has been the Call Your Shot podcast with your host, Alex Harris and Drew Moore. We, again, look to film on Wednesdays, but sometimes that doesn't work out depending on our schedule. So we just usually try to film sometime within the midweek. So we will be back, at least for sure, next week sometime during So
absolutely. One last parting word is Broncos country. Let's ride.
Okay. We'll see y'all next week.